Hello, and welcome to the Off-Meta Umineko Read-Along Podcast, a weekly podcast where I guide my friends and first-time readers through my favorite story of all time, the highly acclaimed murder mystery visual novel, Umineko When They Cry. We'll be discussing its narrative and themes, and they'll work together with our community to try and solve its various mysteries. Hope you'll join us on this exciting journey as we delve into the witch's cat box. I'm Kyle J, and joining me on our one-way trip to Rokkenjima, we have our readers, James Capelli, Ben, and Hayley. Welcome, y'all. So, how was your read this week?
So good. This is honestly when I enjoy Umineko most. You all had me worried, like, this bit's going to be so dense. It's going to be a lot to deal with, and I'm like, man, I read this with no issues, no falling asleep, minimal yelling at Battler.
There's a less Battler than normal.
Yeah.
I just think Battler is like, we don't have a mopey Battler, we have less teen angst.
That is true.
To get through, right?
Yeah. Well,
he's gotten past that.
Less teen
I have
angst.
less teen angst from Battler specifically.
Yeah.
But not
fair.
less teen angst overall.
Fair. There's some notable teen angst.
Yeah.
I like this a lot. I feel like our 2.1, our 3.1, and our 4.1 episodes are kind of like, there's not much for us to say. It's like, all right, they are setting the groundwork for the chapter, and I'm here for it.
Incorrect. Although the first thing that did pop into my head is I saw each of the characters like pop onto the screen when they were at, was it the airport? We think we saw them first.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. My brain did go right. Oh, I do hate these people. Why am I doing this? The story's finished. How about you, Ben? Did you enjoy it or no?
Yeah, I really did like it. I thought the ending was my favorite, which I know we'll get into. I do love the new fun mechanic surprise that we get at the end. That makes my mystery solving heart feel joy. But the biggest thing for me would be Ange's backstory is great, and I think that it's just overall very good and not something I expected to get 4 episodes into a visual novel for. Like, I thought you would think that you would have all the characters established, and then you get this one really cool one that just happens to come in later. So that's cool. I like that. And I think that she is a good complement to Battler and may help handle a lot of the frustrations we as readers sometimes feel with him. So that's good. I like that.
I'll tell you what I appreciated about this week's reading, which is that I got to read a good visual novel. Because in the time from our last recording to this recording, I read a whole separate visual novel called Raging Loop, which was 2/3 compelling, and the ending was just bad.
Oh dear.
That bad?
I won't get into it because I have opinions, me of all people.
Yeah.
And I could tell you about it separately, but it felt like they had 2 different games and stories that like they wanted to make, and they just were like, I don't know how to segue this, so here's a ton of lore, word vomit, word play, and no gameplay, and no it's like I don't care, but I've spent 35 hours now. I have to read the last 15 hours to get the ending. So coming back into a VN with better art, better music, that's for sure. Because holy shit, what was it, Chromatic Clock or something like that? You really do see that like the almost jazz sort of theme is very much Ange's music, and I'm fucking here for it. It slaps, literally. The bass, slap at the bass.
Yeah.
So it's just good to get back into something that I'm enjoying a lot more. Even though I'm pretty sure I know how this game ends, and if I'm right, I'll be sad.
Just for posterity's sake, what was the verb that you used there for Raging Loop? What were you doing? Were you reading it by any chance?
Well, when there's text on a screen, that is typically what you do is read. You'll also notice I ended it with. You'll also notice that actually you do, because it is a social deception game that you make choices on. But you're also going to notice that you're also going to notice I ended my sentence with playing the game, playing a game that I like.
You can both read and play a game. Both exist.
Yeah. There's this little thing I like to call RPGs. Which has a lot of reading and plot, but is a game.
This is all getting cut because the start of this conversation happened outside of the fucking recording.
Yeah, so let me just set some groundwork for our listeners at home.
What you need to know is that Hayley has wrong opinions about things, and feels the need to rub that in my face for some strange ego reason. I don't, whatever.
Oh, it's all ego. Like, whatever, man. Basically, we were having a debate just before we went live on this as to whether Umineko is a game or a book. I say it is a book. It's called a visual novel. It's basically a story. It's a novel. You read it. There's nothing to play, really, at all.
You know what I like is when I pop open a good novel, when I open a good book, and I turn to the first page and I say, what are the trophies that I have unlocked for my physical book?
Your Kindle could have trophies. Would that make it a game?
Who even knows if you get trophies? But
you do. You get trophies in Umineko. It's a
you do, but you do, but they don't really matter. You know, I got a trophy this read that was like 5,000 clicks. It's like, oh, fucking good.
I got that as well. Yeah.
Hayley, let me drop this on you. Nothing matters. Ever.
Oh, this absolutely doesn't matter, but this is content. It's engagement. So I want to hear from our listeners. Hop into our Discord. I'm going to post a poll. Is Umineko a game or a novel?
But also, it's both. Why can't it be both? Things can be more than one thing.
Oh, Ben. But where's the fun in that, Ben? Where's the argument? Where's the drama?
All right, I'm going back to muted.
I love a measured take, unless it's against Capelli.
Mm-hmm. Only extremism works against Capelli.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This week, we are starting episode 4, Alliance of the Golden Witch, with about 3.5 hours of reading, ending with the line, "There I will make a grand announcement regarding the succession of the head. I will resolve your foolish quarrel myself. Uuhhahaha." After which the clock advances from, I think, 3:24 p.m. to 6:07 p.m.?
That looked correct.
Which is videos 54 through 57 of the YouTube playlist. If you have not cut up to that point, go ahead and stop the podcast to catch up before rejoining us, or if you're just listening to us along for the ride, thanks. Episode 4 begins with the Ashiramiya family arriving at the Niijima airport. Battler, having made a fool of himself on the plane as a result of his fear of vehicles, is being mocked by the rest of his family. George defends Battler, saying that he likely learned that fear from his mother, Asumu, who likewise couldn't handle anything more intense than a bicycle or a car. Fooling around with Maria as they all head to the taxi to the harbor, Battler accidentally bumps into someone before apologizing, and the entire family drives away. As they do, the world turns gray, and time seems to stop for everyone and everything, except for the person that Battler had bumped into, Ange. A black cat approaches Ange and transforms into Bernkastel. Ange laments that she is unable to stop her family from going to Rokkenjima, and Bernkastel confirms that since Ange became sick before the scope of the witch's cat box, there could be no worlds where she comes with her family to the island. Ange does, however, appreciate the miracle of being able to see her family again like this. With the 4th game about to begin, Ange resolves to uncover what occurred on that fateful day, October 4th, 1986, and take her family back.
Did we know Bernkastel was a cat? Is she the cat in Schrodinger's box, in the witch's cat box that Kyle's always referencing at the beginning of these?
I think that's a fun theory. I like that idea.
I think this is the first time we see her take a cat form.
Do we ever see the cat earlier than this? I feel like we do, but I can't recall.
Not that I can remember.
Her sprite has a cat tail, if you look at the full-bodied sprite.
Yes.
But we never see that full-body sprite.
Bernkastel's a weeb?
I mean,
I can't really say that. Beatrice is a weeb. Like, we know that. Like, that is canon.
Yeah, Bernkastel's a furry. Please get the terms correct.
Thank you. We need furry representation.
I know, right? I was like, aren't we all weeps?
We are literally playing a Japanese visual novel. That's pretty obscure.
We are playing a visual novel, he said. One fan for Capelli.
I can't believe it's taken us this long to get into this fight. Man.
Honestly, yeah, I agree. I'm surprised it's taken this long.
We've run out of other things to talk about, I guess.
I can't believe how much I started to dislike Kyrie here as well. The way that she was talking about Asumu? Is that Battler's mom's name?
Asumu, yeah.
I don't know. It just felt really mean-spirited. Like, the lady's dead. Like, come on, man.
I mean, we know that she's fueled by jealousy. Like, that is her defining sin.
Yeah, I mean, envy is her sin. Yeah. So I'm just wondering if like, we don't know enough about Asumu to know what she was like when she was alive, but the way Kyrie spoke about her in episode 3 made it seem extremely negative. Like, obviously she was envious of her, but like even more so, like, this was a bad person. So I guess it didn't really clock to me that was that bad. I don't know. Especially knowing why Kyrie is saying the things that she is now makes me understand her more and not dislike it as much as oh, this is a neat character. Like, this is a neat thing that we now know why because of last episode. That's how I took it more than my opinion of Kyrie changing, which I still think she's one of my favorite characters.
Okay.
I'll go back to what Hayley said at the very, very start where Kyle asked us how our reading was, and then she was just like, man, I don't like any of these people. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of agree. Like, who here do I like? I can probably count on one hand. But the more you learn, like, oh, we started off, we like Kyrie a lot. The more we're learning, it's like, not a great person. And that's kind of how I felt it's been about every person, except for the kids. But like, then we have our whole George debate. We definitely have split opinions on Battler. I think like Jessica's the one character that we're like, okay, no, actually, she's probably the most innocent person here. But yeah, like, and still, I understand them. I see where they're coming from. Like, I've definitely had conversations with Kyle about Kraus, and we haven't actually seen him present day do anything that's that bad, that shitty. But we know his background, so
yeah,
it makes me wonder though why they play up Kyrie as so likable, right at the start of the story, where she gives Battler the whole flip the chessboard. Let's stop. Let's think about this rationally, right? Just like, oh, I like her because in all the chaos, she is a breath of fresh air. She is a level-headed person, no matter what.
Yep.
So to see her just turn that and like be kind of nasty about somebody who's not there, period. It's like, yeah.
I think that they do that, and I guess it is jarring, but I also think that Kyrie has such a bigger role, and her family has such a bigger role in the story than we ever could have predicted from episode like 1 and 2. Like, yes, Kyrie was like the stereotypical like detective like you see a bunch of like mystery ones that have that like detective like air about them, but they turned that character and kind of put it on their head where they're actually a main part of the story and have their own flaws and have their own like grievances, which I think is very neat because we don't have a character that doesn't like just bring everyone together and say this is how this all happened in the library with the lead pipe, etc. I don't know. I see it so all these characters are so neat except Kenzo. Kenzo still sucks. But like everybody else is so neat.
Yeah. Have you played Disco Elysium?
Yes, I have. Disco Elysium's very good. I hated most characters in that game, and I think it's still so good.
Yeah.
I need to play that game. I played the first like 2 hours.
You would love it.
And then I know. I played the first 2 hours and then just got distracted with something else.
Yeah, that's basically the same for me.
I played that with my best friend, and like he had already played it, so we played it together, and he just like we had 2 completely different playthroughs because you can just so much can happen. Everything's so interconnected. Ugh,
that's so cool.
Good.
So good.
Yeah. Also, I love the system they use for that.
Sorry.
I like the RPG system.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I think it's one of the most brilliant takes on an RPG system I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if they released a TTRPG rulebook that was like, oh, like, yeah, you divide your characters into, like, your subconscious traits, and that's how the DM tells you information. Fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Ben's Kyrie point like really made me think of the detective in that. Like, you start out trying to solve the mystery, and in the end you're more invested in like what the characters, who they are, and you know what drives them, than you are in the mystery.
Yes, for sure. And that's a game. That is a game that you have to read a lot.
It is. That one's
some could.
I mean, to be fair, you can just listen.
Yeah.
You have to make choices, and you have to.
You have to hit the buttons to move around.
Yeah, exactly. Interactive.
Exactly. Oh.
Anyway, my point with bringing up Kyrie is I think that she is going to be the next person to solve the epitaph and be a witch.
Interesting.
And I'm not just saying that because upon rewatching the intro video, when starting the chapter, there is a single character in there who I did not recognize that was clearly dressed like a witch, and trying to figure out who that is. They only show up for like a split second.
Yeah, there's several scenes from the intro video that are from this episode.
Oh, really?
Which I'm surprised they featured so prominently, considering that it's such spoilers.
I thought the intro video was like a little different per chapter. Not that this is the questions arc intro video, which is what it is. I realized that. Oh no, this is.
Yeah, that is one of the problems with the remake is that they not the remake the
mod
the collection is they made one single one.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the original it is still one cutscene, but it's like only episode 1 stuff. It's just mostly shots of the island of Rokkenjima and the mansion and the character sprites.
We just need to watch more of the Japanese theater production.
Yes.
For each chapter.
What? There's a theater production?
It's not like an actual theater. It's like I posted it in our chat before, but it's like basically choreography to music that kind of recaps a whole chapter in like 5 minutes or so.
There's a full stage play though, for each episode.
Oh,
I think
cool.
There's some, I don't know the details. I'll have to look that up at some point because it's worth talking about.
I bet it's bad, but I would still be very interested to check it out.
In the meta world, Ronove comes to wake up Beatrice, who hasn't slept in excitement for the start of the next game. Beatrice asks Ronove how Battler is doing after how she tricked him in the last game, and Ronove says that Battler has been curled up in a ball, completely unresponsive since then. Worried, Beatrice decides to try and cheer Battler up. However, when she arrives with an overly cheerful greeting, she finds Battler chasing Beelzebub around trying to recover his stolen breakfast, with no signs of the despair Ronove claimed. Beatrice is quite embarrassed at being tricked, and Battler thanks Ronove for getting one over on Beatrice for him. Battler espouses that he will never again forget that he and Beatrice are enemies, and tells her not to pull something like that ever again. At first, Beatrice mocks Battler, and says that if he is truly so weak to that kind of attack, she might just do it again, once he forgets. However, Battler's stern gaze forces Beatrice to relent. With Battler ready to begin the 4th game, Beatrice informs him that a guest will be joining them, the mysterious girl that interrupted the end of the previous game. Ange appears and berates Battler for not fighting against the witch seriously. Battler says that since he will never give up, even if it takes 1,000 years, he will eventually defeat the witch. However, Ange sarcastically replies that he must be incredibly patient, and that even the finite can become infinite if treated the wrong way. Battler seems to recognize Ange, but she refutes it, saying that he can't afford to be so trusting just because someone appears who kind of looks like his sister. Ange, who eventually introduces herself as Gretel, says that she is an ally of Battler's and an enemy of witches, but that he should still stay on his guard. With introductions out of the way, Beatrice begins the 4th game as clouds gather to shut off Rokkenjima from the outside world. Ange privately watches as her family all arrive on that cursed island and prays for Battler to quickly win this game and come back to her.
Battler ain't winning shit. He's so stupid. Their hair is basically an identical colour. She calls herself Gretel, famously in the pair Hansel and Gretel. Like, come on, bro. I can't.
I mean, he does recognize her. He basically recognized her immediately as Ange, and he's like, "That's not possible." And she's like, "Don't do this. You could just be tricked."
But why does he just buy it straight away? I don't know.
Yeah.
Buy what?
That she's not Ange. Like, there's been so much crazy stuff that's come down.
Because that's acknowledging witches and magic, and he can't do that. That's it. He forces himself not to think about it, and she reinforces that too. Like, hey, let's just move on. She's tricked you before. Just know that whoever I am, I'm here to help you. And he's just like, okay. And clearly, throughout the chapter, is going to be that tongue-in-cheek of, I kind of know who this is, but it's crazy because that's time travel. And that's like, I think the one thing I think is reasonable to say that time travel would be stupid in his perspective to expect here.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but there's been so much, like the fact that he is in a metaverse, like that he's okay with accepting, and just like the fact that he's in a metaverse is acknowledging that, I mean, okay, it's not acknowledging that witches exist, but acknowledging that your sister could also be in that metaverse at a different age, like, shouldn't be that difficult of a stretch.
Yeah, theoretically.
I think for him to get to that point is moving towards the accepting of witches, and she just won't let him.
It's a take.
It's a take.
That's my only battler complaint for this episode. So I got it all out my system. That's it.
All right, I will keep you honest on that.
We shall see.
In the notes, I also put that he was dumb, but mostly just because I think he's dumb and not for that reason. But I do wonder if this episode is going to be the one that includes Ange, or are we going to see Ange all through the Answers arc? Like, obviously, we're about to talk about Ange a lot more and her backstory and what comes next.
Mm-hmm.
But do we think that Ange is really going to like be that side character to Battler through the Answers arc, or is she only going to be here for this one episode? And I think that's going to be interesting to find out. Something I'm just speculating.
I have one reliable take on what I think the Answers arc is going to be.
Okay.
And that is, I have no fucking idea what the Answers arc is going to be like.
Yeah, we've already had several pretty big twists.
I don't think we even hypothesize how it's going to be structured. Like, I think this chapter really cemented it to me that we are going to revisit the prior games.
Yep.
But I don't think it's going to be like Chapter 5 of the Answers arc is revisiting Chapter 1. Chapter 6 is revisiting Chapter 2. Like, I don't think it's going to be that. I think Chapter 5 will probably revisit all of the questions arc. And the story is just going to continue to evolve in a way that we can't even anticipate. That's what I think the Answers arc is going to be.
Makes sense.
I think it's a fair guess, yeah.
That being said, just my notes on this was that I fucking love Ronove.
Mm-hmm.
Right. In the Message Bottle 3, I had him in my top 3. I want more of him. This just cements it. I love this character.
He's such a troll.
He's so just fucking charming. Right? He completely screws with Beatrice, and she doesn't even get mad at him, really. You know? And he's just here for a good time. He's just enjoying himself. I don't really know who he wants or if anyone to win, if he's okay with being trapped here, if he knows that this is supposed to be a trap forever or whatever. He's just like, yeah, all right, whatever. This is fun. I'll mess with you a little bit. You are still kind of a child, which is like the thoughts that he has that Beatrice is still pretty immature and young.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that they're sticking with that part of her character, which is what we saw before she came up with the idea of the North Wind strategy. And I'm just glad that we don't have Battler moping around that he almost lost. I'm also glad that he's not like taking the childish route of like, well, you were forcing me to sign, so it wouldn't have mattered. He was just like, no, fuck you. Don't ever pull that shit again, because that's not what this is about. And she's like, you'll forget one day and I'll use it on you. And before Ange shows up, I'm like, absolutely, he would fall for that again.
Definitely.
Absolutely. But with Ange there, she will remind him to be like, don't be an idiot. Don't be a moron. This has worked before. And I had to show up then. Don't make me. So it's a good dynamic. I'm enjoying their back and forth. And I really like how she's saying, like, you got fooled by somebody who was supposed to help you before. That might still be me. You have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I like that conversation. It very much felt like the kind of conversation you have like in a Clock Tower game where it's like, yeah, they could be lying, but like also they're still playing consistently with what makes sense what they're saying. So it's like we're gonna trust them for now.
What are the odds? What are the odds that she is a ruse?
I mean, you've mentioned before the possibility of shapeshifting goat like substitutes, so it's definitely not impossible.
We don't know what it means to have a homunculus still. We've just had it kind of mentioned. Answers arc can get crazy with this stuff. Like, it can go super heavy fantasy to try to rationalize all sorts of crazy stuff. That's why this person did something illogical, because they were replaced with a homunculus in that moment. You know, it can get wild, and I think it will. I don't know if it's going to get wild like that, but...
Well, we shall see. We then move to St. Lucia Academy to see some of Ange's past from the future timeline. St. Lucia Academy is a prestigious all-girls boarding school that is only known by celebrities and nobility. It is so cut off from the outside world, it also serves as a prison school for nobles to confine and hide their unwanted daughters. For those attending under those circumstances, like Ange, other students would shun, isolate, and bully them. When the Rokkenjima incident took place in 1986, Ange had been staying with her maternal grandparents at the time. Eva, as the only survivor, sued to gain full custody of Ange so that she could raise her to be the future head of the Uuhhahaha family. However, unable to move on from the loss of her son George, Eva constantly berated Ange and her parents for her failings to live up to Eva's insane standards. When Ange eventually attempted to run away, Eva used the excuse of punishment to take out all of her grief and anger on Ange with fervor and glee. Since then, Ange's life has been so restricted and controlled that she was nothing more than cattle under the yoke of the Uuhhahaha name.
Yeah, this chapter really made me hate Eva. Like, evil fucking person. Like, this is just how she lashed out in her grief, with no one to anger her to who she was? Is this what Hideyoshi was keeping at bay? Was she like this with George? Which I don't get the sense that she was, but she was clearly capable of this over a year's time. It's it's one thing to be grief-stricken. It's another thing to be grief-stricken as the killer yourself? Question marks? It was, the thing about this is this is so real to a lot of history, and a lot of people have lived this life. And that's one of the reasons that I think really struck with a good chord with me with Ange. Is just, I completely buy this character and her situation and what she's going through 1,000%. It's well written.
Yeah, I agree. I still have a soft spot for at least Eva, back when she was on Rokkenjima before all the stuff started. But as soon as she found the gold is where I start to think that something either clicked in her or something changed that made her more evil than she usually was, if that makes sense. I don't think that she is necessarily evil when it comes to raising George, being with Hideyoshi, being around the family. She has her own desires and she's greedy, but I do think that she's trying to keep out the best for her family and isn't necessarily trying to actively kill people until it's necessary in her mind, but that's when that switch flips for me. Just my thoughts.
It's tough. There's no way to know for sure because so much of the story is an unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the major themes coming up is believing people and without love it cannot be seen, and different truths overriding other truths based on interpretation. So there's definitely lots of room for interpretation in the story, and that's why the story can be so powerful, is because there's so much room to really think about everything in it.
Yeah, so much time you could even make an insanely long podcast analyzing a lot of the game.
Yeah.
A lot of the game.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a game club, not a book club. With no friends and only derision from her classmates, Ange relishes the little time she has alone. She hides away in some forgotten corner of the schoolyard and reads Maria's diary, taken from her possessions after her passing. Maria, having only been 3 years older than Ange at the time, had been a close friend of Ange's, and now the version of Maria that she imagines in her head as she reads through her diary is her only friend. This Maria begins telling Ange of Sakutaro, the stuffed animal that she received from Rosa for her birthday. Ange is drawn to the world of Maria's memories as she continues to read through her diary. We see the day of Maria's birthday, where Rosa takes her to a family restaurant after having to cancel their previous celebration plans because she had to work late. Ange converses with Maria and remembers her own birthdays with Rudolph, Kyrie, and even Battler, who would occasionally come even though he was still feuding with their father. They were the happiest moments of her life. At the restaurant, Maria received a lion-stuffed animal that Rosa had handmade for Maria. Apparently, Rosa owned and ran a fashion brand of sorts called Auntie Rosa, with the slogan, "I can't forgive the way I was before today." Just kind of laying it all out there, huh, Rosa? Maria had originally planned to name the lion Sakura after cardcaptor Sakura, but since it was a male lion, Maria changed it to Sakutaro. Sakutaro immediately became Maria's best friend, and would keep her company when she was home all alone because Rosa often works so late. Apparently, Maria, much like Ange now, was also very isolated in school. Her peculiar and offbeat personality, read undiagnosed autism, combined with her intense knowledge of the occult, resulted in her being ostracized and bullied by her classmates. Maria justifies this, saying that there is a rule that every class has to have one kid who gets picked on, and by accepting that role herself, she is protecting someone else. According to Maria, this rule was a compromise between a witch and an angel that resulted in the health and happiness of 19 others at the cost of her own suffering. Ange, seeing the parallels in her own situation, enviously wonders how such a simple change of perspective can let Maria be happy under such miserable circumstances. Maria suggests that it's because Ange is all alone, and offers to have Sakutaro become her friend as well, puppeting the stuffed animal as if it were a real creature. However, Maria's love had most certainly imbued that stuffed animal with soul.
So I might be projecting here because I don't have a ton of memories from when I was quite small, but do people really remember much from before being 6 years old? How could she remember Battler being at a few birthdays when she'd only had...
Yeah, a few is a lot.
5 or 6. It's
you are a grown adult. Ange is a late teenager who has to think back 10, 15 years. I don't think as a teenager, I remember my childhood much better than I do now. But also, all the memories after that are incredibly traumatic. That is a memory that is very comforting and safe for her, so she probably plays that over in her mind constantly to remember it. She says, this is the happiest moment of my life, which is an extremely sad thing in its own right, but just you're going to get an anchor that you're going to lock onto that's going to mentally stabilize you because you need to hold on to something. And if you're going to hold on to a memory of when your cool big brother, who you miss, came and celebrated your birthday and you had a good time with him and your parents, you're going to remember that.
I mean, I guess.
That is a coping mechanism that children use.
I guess, but also as a coping mechanism, because I haven't been able to remember from before I was 6, even when I was 10. It is a trauma response for myself. So that's why I said I think I might be projecting, that I can't relate here because the opposite happened for me. I didn't lock on to the good memories necessarily. It was a reset point in my life. So I don't know. That's why it kind of didn't jive for me, because I was she experienced this massive trauma. For me, that would have meant that I wouldn't have remembered anything before that. But she's done the opposite, I guess. So
for me to properly respond to that would be to psychoanalyze you, and as close as we are, I don't know you that well. Yeah,
that is a different podcast.
That is a whole different thing that I'm also not qualified to do. So
all right, next up on Off Meta Presents comes psychoanalysis of chat.
Yeah, no. I've done so much therapy and EMDR. No, I'm okay. I've done all the therapy I need right now.
Good on you for getting that.
So I guess my one point is I am kind of like Hayley in that I always had a bad memory and I can't remember a lot of specific things, but I also can't forget the stuff that I do remember. There are specific points in my childhood that I'm I remember this and I don't know why, but a lot of my childhood is it's gone.
Yeah.
And was even like that when I was in high school and early college.
Yeah, also memory is a very tricky thing. I mean,
who knows if it's real?
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of stuff Angie is remembering is probably also just cobbled together from other things and rewritten over time. It's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
Well, also, supposedly, anytime you remember something, you're really remembering the last time you remembered it. So, imagine if you take a file, copy, paste it, it's not going to be as true to the original. So how much of it is her filling in the gaps, right? Maybe it really wasn't a super happy time between Battler and Rudolph, but she's remembering the parts that were good or making that it was good. Children can do that as well.
That would be very on point for the themes of the story, for sure.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about an unreliable narrator, and memories of childhood can be pretty unreliable.
Yeah, definitely.
And Kyle's smirking, so I'm thinking maybe I'm onto something.
Kyle's always smirking when we say anything.
Kyle's always smirking, yeah.
I just received a very funny text message. That's clearly what that was.
Yeah, right. I'm also calling it now. A full-grown line is going to be on Rokkenjima, and Maria's going to say that it's Sakutaro.
That's
interesting.
Especially with the whole, she put a soul in that animal.
Okay.
Are there lion pedestals on the stair?
Yes, there are lion statues outside the chapel.
They're going to come to life.
I haven't disagreed with something so hard in my life. I don't think that's going to happen. At all.
It's
a very strange cold shot.
She's going to say that she summoned him. Because the whole point of view that Kyle's going to get to in the next paragraph is Angie being wow, I wish I could believe as strong as Maria, right? Something like that is kind of what she says. That this wasn't just a stuffed toy that kept her company. No, this was a friend that she completely believed was real, and it's the power of love that her mother gave it to her and all that. And then you get into love as the power of a witch, etc., etc. And I think it's just going to be another crazy thing that's going to happen. And I think it will be this chapter.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put it past. The story has done some strange things, so.
I'm interested to see if this comes true, and if it does come true.
What a fucking prediction, right?
I just feel like, all right, hands up, I'm done. I guess.
When Rosa calls late at night to inform Maria that she will have to stay overnight in the office, Maria has so much fun playing with Sakutaro that she doesn't mind, whereas before she would often cry about being lonely. Saying that she will see Maria for dinner the following night, Rosa sends Maria out to go buy herself dinner from a nearby convenience store. She tells Maria not to bring Sakutaro with her, but Maria, not understanding the purpose of her mother's demand, decides to be naughty and bring him along in a knapsack anyways. Ange is once again envious of Maria's ability to always have a friend with her, and Maria reminds her that she and Sakutaro can be just that for her. Ange just needs to work on her magic so that she can perceive them even when she doesn't have Maria's diary, which apparently contains a fragment of Maria's soul, open. Ange resolves to read through Maria's grimoire sometime soon to better learn Maria's magic. Back in Maria's memory, she gets her dinner from a nearby convenience store that is open late. Even the store clerk is worried about having seen the same child here buying food for herself so late at night so many times. Ange, looking at this scene, marvels at the power of Maria's magic that allows her to create a real friend out of Sakutaro, who can allow her to find joy despite her loneliness. Maria then teaches Ange the magic of being able to see her even without the diary, functionally describing the process of creating a tulpa of Maria that she can imagine at any time. However, Ange's process is interrupted by the arrival of 3 girls from her class, who, having heard Ange call out to Maria, mock her as she flees.
Yeah, so this whole flashback scene just made me really love Maria and Ange as characters. I don't know how much I can say this is really Maria because it's Ange's perception of her. If you're team fantasy, blah blah blah, whatever. But just the whole story of her going to the store and just the logic of my mom said don't bring Sakutaro, but I'm gonna do it anyway, and logic it out and convince myself is just I mean, people speculate. You've said that the author has experienced social work with kids. This whole flashback segment, I see so much of that. If he doesn't have that experience, research was clearly done. Just with having my own kids and everything, just I don't want anything bad to happen to these kids, these poor girls, and I know bad things will and already have, and just won't someone think of the children, please?
This whole scene was so tense.
Oh god, it was so good. When you say this is where Umineko shines, this is where it really, really gets you.
What?
You could be wrong, man. The characterizations in this segment are so good.
The characterizations are good, but I don't think that this is where it shines. At least for me, I'm the anti-Hayley in this case. I'm just yeah, this is fine. It's good to get a little backstory so we understand the characters and their motivations.
Nah, I loved it.
Most of the time I'm reading this, I'm going, I'm gonna get back to Rokkenjima. I want to know what happens. So, I've never been a big prequel person. I've never been a big let's dive into the backstory of this character. I would rather the backstory be revealed more over time.
Great. So we'll never get Nanjo's backstory, and then you can stay true to your beliefs.
Thank you. I cannot live in a world where Nanjo isn't the saint of all saints. That broke me. That broke my concentration, Capelli. Thank you. But it's good. I enjoy it, but there wasn't anything that super called out to me here. But I love that you both love it. And I think that's great.
Convinced something awful was going to happen to Maria on her walk back home. I just really felt it was building up to that. And the shopkeeper calling it out as foreshadowing. People have seen you out late at night. You could have, yeah. But
something bad did happen to her. She had to drink a disgusting soda.
Yeah.
This segment is pretty heavy. Any of the segments of Maria and Ange's backstory are just heavy.
Traumatized children.
So much. Yeah. It's hard to read. This is that's one of the reasons why episode 4 is probably the episode I revisit the least, just because reading these segments is kind of a downer. It's really hard to read some of these parts where you're this child is neglected as fuck.
Yeah. But even the whole rationale of my suffering at the hands of bullies is justified by the fact that me taking on this burden saves 19 other kids from it. What an altruistic, again, coping mechanism for a child to take on and just be okay with it, and she's still a happy kid. Jesus, she's stronger than I was at that age.
That's why Ange, she's can I please learn your special technique for not feeling so shitty under these circumstances?
Yeah. Yeah.
Back in Ange's present, the world of 12 years in the future, Ange, having miraculously survived jumping off through a skyscraper, meets with Okonogi, a businessman who was a close friend and confidant of Eva before her passing. He tells Ange that Eva never told him anything about what happened on the island that day. However, he does tell her that he suspects that the riddle of the epitaph was likely planned to be used by Kenzo as an excuse to have the much more deserving Eva inherit the Uuhhahaha family headship over Kraus. He suspects that Kenzo brought Eva to Kuwadorian and told Eva the epitaph's solution as a way of handing her the headship, and that was why she survived the accident. Ange scoffs, but Okonogi has several bits of circumstantial evidence that leads him to trust Eva. 1, she had the head's ring. 2, Eva never would have sacrificed George and Hideyoshi, and her tears at their funeral were undoubtedly real. And finally, the police had thoroughly investigated Eva as a potential suspect and found no evidence of foul play. However, Ange remains unconvinced, as her hatred of Eva continues to tint her perspective. Okonogi laughs at how the two of them could have come to such opposite opinions based on the same evidence. The difference, he says, is in whether or not you can feel love for the other side. Even if Eva did somehow have physical proof of her innocence, Ange had already decided that Eva's guilt in her heart and would have found a way to discount it. Without love, the truth cannot be seen.
All right, Hayley, I need you to explain this note for me.
Well,
it's yeah. What? Come on.
so my note is my money is now on Okonogi done it. He's covering his ass. Like we saw him do that next time. He's talking about how Eva never told me what happened on the island. He was there. He killed everybody forever.
Forever?
Yeah, love. He loves her.
Interesting.
Killed everybody.
Okay.
It's the same. It has the same like credence as my Kumasawa on it theory.
Right. Right.
Kumasawa was on the island, though, so I feel like that makes it a little bit more credible.
Well, maybe not on the island from what we.
That's true.
We see.
That's true. Later on.
Oh yeah.
Like I don't like that theory if it's true, but like we're getting close to the halfway point, and I feel like that's the point at which most mysteries should like have revealed the perpetrator as a character in the story for it to be a satisfying thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I feel like if he does suddenly show up more often, like, yeah, oh, what's this character out of nowhere? Hopefully, I hope he'd just be a red herring in that case.
Yeah, I would not say that I believe that he is the perpetrator. I do think that maybe he has a little bit more to give the story just in general, but I feel like the character we're about to talk up next has a lot more credence to being a person that actually influenced this from outside of Rokkenjima on that day versus Okonogi. And I don't know. I thought Okonogi was such an interesting character. I didn't immediately like him, but I also didn't immediately dislike him too. And I thought what he was saying was still interesting.
Mm-hmm.
He definitely was like, I am learning more about this character, and I actually want to learn more to figure out if I like them or not.
Yeah, I don't dislike him.
Yeah. I don't want to trust him, but that's just the way his art was done, right? Slick back hair, that pose, that posture. But like, that's the good part whenever you play a game that is a visual novel. The artwork suddenly can give things away. Like, why do we suddenly have full-blown artwork and everything of this person who we've never met before? Him and the next character that we get introduced to is like, oh, okay, these are going to be important people that we see their art more often than beyond just this one scene. I do want to talk about the dumbest fucking thing I think the story has done so far.
Oh.
Which is that Ange jumps off a skyscraper, goes through Mission Impossible acrobatics, and miraculously lands. And they're just like, yep, moving on.
Yeah.
It's to the point where it's like, I hope it's Team Fantasy, and the whole point is that Bernkastel knew if she jumps, she would miraculously survive. Because if it's Team Mystery, and this chick just jumped off a building and happened to survive, and everybody's just like, haha, okay. That's so stupid. That's so stupid.
I think the big reveal of all of this for me was that she's still in her timeline and going to help Battler at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, for some reason I just kind of expected a poof, like she was now gone from her timeline and then moved over into this like pocket dimension game board thing. That was what I was expecting. So to find out that she's still in her timeline, still learning things, and is probably going to share those things with herself in the pocket dimension as she finds them, maybe. those could be happening simultaneously too. Like in this Ange's like
Mhm.
timeline. So I think that's really neat.
Yeah.
I just didn't ever clock that was going to be a thing that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
But now there's someone who's looking at this from 13 years later, however many, 12, 13, that is actually able to investigate the future. That's really neat.
Well,
Hmm?
I've got another theory.
Oh, no.
Hold
boy.
on.
Well,
Let me take a
it's
drink
that,
first.
It's that Beatrice has been playing this game. Like, the game has just been going on for 12 years,
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
right? Like the time in between games, the question mark segments and the tea party takes 4 fucking years to reset the game.
Maybe.
So when she arrives, she's invading into the game in a present tense, rather than jumping back and whatever you have to do to figure it out. And like maybe like you and I theorized about a time jump. Maybe all the artwork on these characters is going to change as they realize, oh, I'm not a teenager anymore. I'm in my 30s.
So no change for George.
Kumasama will be dead at the start of this section just because she will die of old age. That's why they had to turn her into Virgilia.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
As long as Nanjo's not dead, we're all good.
It's like recasting the character because the actor died in real life, right? And Kinzo still only has 3 months to live,
Of course.
Yeah, 12 years later, 3 months to live.
which I can't wait to actually talk about that in a little bit.
Yes. All right, let's move forward. As Angie is leaving, Okonogi warns her that the Sumidera family, Angie's family on her mother's side, are after her for the Yoshimiya family inheritance. They are asking him to hold Angie there until her aunt, Kyrie's sister Kasumi, can arrive to take Angie in for protection. He tells Angie that he has a car and driver prepared outside that will help her escape and allow her to continue her journey in search for a truth she can accept. Still not trusting Okonogi fully, Angie heads out the emergency exit on the 3rd floor, planning to take the stairs down, but a black van full of Sumidera goons shows up and attempts to capture her. She attempts to evade them by jumping from the 3rd floor onto the roof of their van, but still gets captured. However, Amakusa, the driver Okonogi had arranged, arrives to rescue her. Amakusa, a young and flippant mercenary, had previously worked as Eva's bodyguard before being fired for making a pass at Angie. Having escaped, Angie ponders how, if she had just trusted Okonogi and gone to the parking garage where Amakusa was waiting for her, she would have been able to escape much more easily and safely. Her inability to trust had almost cost her dearly. Bernkastel then appears, and she and Angie discuss the indeterminate nature of truth. Unless Angie can open the cat box and see the one real truth inside, any interpretation can be equally valid. Until she can find out what actually occurred on that island, it will remain endless. Only the final witch, Angie Beatrice, is outside of Beatrice's game board. It can view the cat box from the future. The truth of the future wins out over the truth of the past. When the incident had just occurred, most viewed it as a potential mass murder. But after the message bottle was discovered several years later, washed up on a neighboring island, the occult witch theory began to take over. While Angie had previously ignored the message bottle, seeing it as nothing more than mad ravings of the occult, she decides to investigate it. After all, as Okonogi said, you can't see in 3 dimensions with only one eye.
That's such a foreboding line. I like that. That's got to mean something.
I do like the line, but isn't it just like I feel like when I was reading this, I was like, we've already had that. Was flipping the chessboard. It's basically the same thing, like looking at things from different perspectives.
Sort of, yeah.
So
flipping the chessboard is specifically about looking from your opponent's perspective in like a game theory sense.
Yeah.
And this is more along the lines of like, there are many perspectives. It's not just you and your opponent, and it's looking at things just differently. So yeah, it's more of a broad take on the same idea.
It's not locking in on one preconceived notion that you have, I think is the better way to...
Right.
But you're right, it is a similar idea.
It's a similar idea, but not necessarily the same, because chessboard is like you are analyzing the best move, and the best way to do that is to think about your opponent. Looking at 2 eyes is that you have this idea of someone, of something, but if you take it from a different perspective, you might change your idea.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Without love, it cannot be seen.
I love this because you can take this and apply it to how we've already been talking about characters. It's like, oh, I kind of see them differently now and understand them a bit more. I may not like them, but I get it. Themes upon themes upon themes.
So many Thames.
I was real worried that we were about to get like into Schrodinger again. with this fiction, but I actually liked what I did. But like, I enjoyed that they have. I thought it was a more succinct way of explaining it, which again speaks to Ange being way more competent than Battler. Oh, sorry, I said I wouldn't.
Well, so they already laid all the groundwork already, so.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like Battler would not have fallen for Okonogi's bullshit the way Ange is.
Oh, you think that it's bullshit? Interesting.
I don't think she's falling for his bullshit. That's why she left on the 3rd floor, right?
Yeah, I mean, she very much didn't trust.
Yeah.
Sure, in that moment, yes. But now that Amakusa is there saying, if you had just gone, and she's like, oh, I guess I was wrong. It's like, no, you're just doing what he wants anyway by going to the island, probably, for some reason. That's what I suspect.
Yeah.
Is it weird that I actually do trust him?
Okonogi?
Like, he's like one of the few people, like, they gave me reason, like, some sort of, like, person that isn't necessarily directly connected that I'm like, I like this. Like, I think this is a good plan, whether or not you trust them or not.
Okonogi is already trying to play both sides so that this way he comes out on top.
Yeah.
I don't think that he was trying to play on Sumidera's side.
Well, he at least said he set it up so that he couldn't be blamed. Yeah.
Sure, like, you have to save your own skin a little bit, but in terms of, like,
Right.
like, he definitely helped Ange
Right.
way more than he helped Sumidera here.
Yeah, he didn't have to do that part. Yeah.
Basically, if he had like helped a little bit more, she would have been caught. He would have lost his position, what control he had over the situation. If he helped her, if he helped Ange out any more than he did, then it's very obvious. And the Sumidera family just like deals with him or tries to. Like this way, he's still kind of got a foot on either side of that line.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is a guy who knows how to play politics. Clearly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I don't find that distrustful here.
Distrustful in that I don't think you are actively seeking to harm me, but you are not looking to help me. You will betray me if it benefits you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're keeping me around to see if that happens so that you can keep your options open to find the best thing for yourself. You don't have my best interest at heart.
Mm-hmm. I don't know yet. I don't know if I believe that, but I see your perspective on it. I definitely get that, but I don't think I'm there yet.
Because with extra perspective, you can see what
I see there's another eye. We have 2 eyes.
Ben, you love me, so you understand me.
Well, hold on.
What? You do me harm.
But I think what I could see Sumidera having affected the island in some way, and that's why she wants to stop Ange.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that there is a possibility that Sumidera either herself or sent someone onto the island of Rokkenjima on the night this all happened for some reason that is yet to be explained.
You think like maybe that could be the 18th person?
Yes, I do. I think that makes a lot more sense to me than Okonogi doing anything. Because we've already set up, like, Sumidera evil, bad, dislike, hard bad. But it's... I don't know. I could see that there's a lot more to it. And I also love that we're getting more of Kyrie's backstory. Like, I just think that that's really interesting.
That's why I think she's going to be the next Switch. Yeah. We're getting a lot more about her character, her personality, and now her family. Like, that's huge to have her sister show up, who's also a complete evil, maniacal person. And she just wants to do what's best for her family, and that's to get a shit ton of money from Ange.
She just wants to make people tea. I don't know what you're talking about.
She makes people into tea.
I am obsessed with Amakusa already.
Yeah, he's going to be a good character.
Absolutely love him. I just feel like...
Is that going to be your main when we play the fighting game?
No, because I'm not going to play that. Yeah, I just think that he's going to add some like actual levity. I feel like Battler's levity is not.
Well, he's got that air of confidence about him. And
yeah,
well, let's put it this way. You can't use the red text to say that he's incompetent.
Sure.
With a background and a history like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would do want to say I think we should stop standing a character that works for a bunch of mercenary corps.
Excuse me, Beatrice has been my favorite, and she is terrible. So I'm just being consistent. Like
that's fair.
And people stand the fuck out of Beatrice.
That's true.
We already know that Hayley has bad opinions, so what's one more?
Hmm.
So
I thought we said we weren't going to be doing psychoanalysis.
that's not psychoanalysis. That's called a read.
Not a game? Interesting.
Hayley, definitely not a game. Way more of a book.
Oh, dear.
All right, I want to get on to the next thing here, which is like, I don't know how neither of you put in your notes talking about the message bottle.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So this is the real, like, mystery versus fantasy stuff here. Right? If there is no supernatural element, who wrote this bottle message? If Maria is dead. Because we get the message bottle at the end of chapter 1. And chapter 1, Eva is not killing everybody because Eva is dead. So how do we have the timeline where she survived and supposedly killed everybody on the island, but then Maria wrote this message bottle where she dies pretty early in that chapter? So what the hell is this timeline?
Wait, does Maria die? No, Maria's last till the end in the first chapter.
In the first chapter, yes. Right, at the end of chapter 3 is what seems to have led to this current Ange timeline. Eva survives the island.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if it's a different note, personally.
Possible?
Yeah, we don't know for sure.
I'm wondering if there's a note in each game written by somebody for some reason.
But then I have to wonder why the end credits only talked about it in chapter 1 but not 2 and 3.
That I think is still weird. I
Yeah.
still don't understand why the end credits of every single episode have been completely different too. Like none of them have followed the same format. It's been infuriating. They didn't even talk about like the stakes and like which stake stabbed which person. That's what I was tracking.
Yeah.
That mattered to me.
No.
So
I did obviously notice that like the style of doing the credits was very different with each one.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's I really had just assumed that it was still Maria had written it, because like this episode does introduce that Maria is just constantly scribbling in that journal, and that I feel like there's a comment about her handwriting looking more mature than her age.
In chapter 1, you
No,
mean?
in this one. I think in this episode.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Angie says that it's good, very good handwriting for someone of her age, yeah, but still, like, obviously a child handwriting.
Do they say that they believe Maria wrote this bottle message?
I don't know. I think it's just in
The only thing we know about the message bottle so far is what's said in episode 1.
Yeah.
Because like I feel like if it was suspected to be written by Maria, Angie would have given more credence to it based on what we got in the last few scenes with her putting a little bit of her soul into it. But Angie completely dismisses it as a possibility of being anything occult.
Well, she's kind of on the witches aren't real train, even though she's a witch herself.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know that she would take it as evidence of what actually happened. I think she would take it as this is what Maria wrote about, for sure, while she was alive on Rokkenjima. And maybe the version of the message that Angie has seen is different to the one that we saw in episode 1. But I don't know. I'm kind of okay with them all existing at the same time, I guess.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, Angie does say she's going to investigate it, so.
Yeah.
Maybe we're going to get into like a bit of a Schrodinger's box of which chapter is the canon chapter. Or they're all canon, but none of them are canon.
I think that was kind of talked about in the first thing, and it's kind of set up in the world that it's already been built with Higurashi when they cry, is that there are like shards or like
fragments.
Fragments, that's what it is. I think that all of these can technically be considered canon because it's almost like a multiversal effect. Is really neat.
That's definitely how Higurashi does it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking as well, Ben. I agree.
But that is a magical position to take.
Is it?
Multiversal can be more sci-fi than it is.
That's my boy.
Than it can be magical. But also, it's wild how much this is relating to Star Trek season 5, episode 9. Star Trek Lower Decks. Because it basically talks about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured
Yeah.
Hayley would react to that. We just watched it last night. It was very good. Also talks about multiversal stuff and the Schrodinger's field, which was very neat. And it was very, very cool to watch and how things change. Like, you get to see a lot of different, like, facets of the Star Trek universe all come in, and I think it's very similar here, where things change just slightly between fragments.
It's so good. It's like the iterations of Klingons and the comments about this. Man, you need to.
Oh, that was so good. We don't need it. This isn't a Star Trek fan podcast, but like, I could definitely talk about that episode. It was very good. Anyway,
there's a third split off podcast from this one podcast episode.
Multiverse theory, so hot right now.
Returning to October 4th, 1986, the first day of the final Ushirimiya family conference, we see the adults once again gathered in the parlor discussing Kinzo's health and wishing to meet with him. However, this time, they're being much more direct and forceful about their demands to see Kinzo in person. When Krause reveals his knowledge of the siblings' need for money as the reason they wish to speak to Kinzo, the discussion breaks down once again. However, Kyrie decides to take a different track. She begins by flattering Krause, saying that everyone should have more appreciation for his efforts to take care of their ailing father. In fact, she says, one could view Krause's responsibility of taking care of Kinzo as being the determinative factor of Krause's claim to the headship. At first, this angers Eva, but after a moment she realizes the angle that Kyrie is taking to corner Krause and allows her to continue. Kyrie offers Krause a deal. In return for no longer trying to see Kinzo, possibly up to and including not even seeing him at the point of his passing or even his funeral, Krause would need to agree that he bears the responsibility of preventing Kinzo from dying of anything other than natural causes or disappearing. Something that Krause should easily be able to agree to, unless, as they have all suspected since not seeing Kinzo last year, Kinzo is already dead, and Krause has been keeping that fact a secret. In the Metaworld, Battler says that this is a theory that he has been considering as a solution to Eva Beatrice's web of red. If Kinzo is actually dead, and thus not one of the no more than 18 humans on this Rokkenjima, Eva Beatrice would have been able to list 18 names, including Kinzo's, but not have to list the true culprit, Person X. If Kinzo had in fact died last year, Krause could be hiding his death in order to prevent the distribution of the inheritance, with Krause, Natsui, Dr. Nanjo, and the servants conspiring to create an illusion of him staying locked away in his study. Presenting this theory to Beatrice, she applauds Battler for finally evolving into a being with intelligence. Battler demands that Beatrice repeat that Kinzo is included in the 18 people on the island, but she declines for now. Ange, quick on the uptake, informs Battler that now that he is finally able to play the game properly, the witch will refuse to repeat things in red at his demand, instead preferring to hold her rebuttal until he has built even more on top of this potentially incorrect theory. She does say, however, that theories that he proposes that would successfully deny and destroy the witch must be responded to, as if Beatrice does not, Battler's truth would stand supreme. Ange hashes out some of these rules for the process with Beatrice, and Beatrice grants Battler the ability to give his theories based on a human culprit that sufficiently deny the witch in blue. Beatrice is then obligated to counter all blue statements with the red of her own. Battler complains that this still feels incredibly one-sided, and Ange tells him that instead of making just a single theory and moving forward until the witch cuts his legs out from under him, he should be presenting a barrage of possible explanations on the off chance that one of them hits home. With this new way to fight, Battler declares his first blue truth. Ushirimiya Kinzo is already dead. Therefore, the true number of people on this island is 17. By adding an unknown person X to that, it becomes 18 people. By supposing this person X exists, the crime is possible even if all 17 people have alibis.
Yeah, this was really.
This is great because I think the blue truth is such a neat concept to finally combat the red truth, and it makes so much sense. I did wonder when the chapter started, you get to a specific point and said red truth, blue truth, and I was like, oh, is there going to be blue truth? And then I'm like, it gets close to the end. I'm like, oh, there was no blue truth, and then there was. It was great. I don't know. I just think that this is really neat. I really like. As someone who sometimes just needs a little bit of a summary of things, I also think it helps cut down on some confusion sometimes, that we have something to grasp onto is this is exactly what he's saying versus this is what she's saying. And I think both of those really help me understand the story better. So I also think it's a great tool for me to like get people's positions and exactly what they're trying to communicate.
It's so boring. I don't mind the blue truths. I don't mind having game mechanics explained to me. I just hate the repetition. And Battler being like, oh, so I've been sending one arrow when I could send a barrage, or words, I could do this one thing, but also it would mean this other thing. And it's like, bro, yes, we get it. Like,
I see what you're saying much better now.
Oh, I totally get that.
Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense than what you were saying. I thought you were calling the mechanic boring, and I was...
No, the mechanic's fine. Yeah.
No, the way that they did lead up to it, though, was very frustrating, because I just wanted them to get to the point, which I can agree with you there.
I had to crack up at the screenshot that you sent us, Hayley, which was just like, it's getting confusing, so let's summarize. And you're just like, no, it's fucking not.
Oh my god. I lost my shit. Like, the dog was looking at me like, are you okay? Adam was laughing at me from the corner of the room. He was like, do you think you're going to finish this in time? Like, you seem like you just quit. Like, the music started where we go into, like, Battler thinking things through. Like, I can't remember what it's called, but I was like, oh my god, again? I was enjoying this episode, and why did I have to go and ruin it? Yeah. Yeah. I do rage out a little bit about all of the repetition.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely fair. I like that style of writing personally, but I can absolutely understand if you find it frustrating.
Yeah.
I think it's funny that we go from how confusing things were at the end of chapter 2, and the author's like, I'll make it easier to understand for chapter 3, and then chapter 4, you just cut to Hayley walking in a line of monks banging a plank of wood on her head.
That's so good. That's so good.
Yeah.
What is interesting to me about this is the way that the rules have now been laid out. Like, we have an understanding of how the game will be played and how a winner will be chosen. Is we now have a concrete way of how games can end in draws. If they each present a blue or red truth that the other cannot dispute, there is no clause that says how the game ends in that case.
Oh shit,
Yep.
You're right.
That's true.
Correct.
So either chapter 4 is going to end in a draw, and you realize continual draws is how this game goes on forever, or a draw is what's going to finally, like, break the game, so to speak, and how they get out.
I'm wondering, though, if we're assuming that this is all mystery, and I kind of have to in this case right here, because if we're assuming this is all mystery, Beatrice knows exactly what happened on the island, and obviously she is trying to hide what actually happened with the idea of there being witches.
Mm-hmm.
So how can it end in a draw where she doesn't know how to counter something that Battler said? Like, either there's something that Battler can't counter that proves that there's a witch because he doesn't know a piece of information, or there's something that Beatrice can't counter because it's true. But how would both happen at the same time?
Probably by choice.
Or different Twilights. Like, what if Battler guesses the correct solution to one Twilight, but can't get the correct solution to, like, a different Twilight?
But even they cover that. He has to solve all of them.
Yeah,
Right.
because if there's even one red thing, she still wins. I don't think that that's a draw, per se.
But by definition, if there's a blue truth that is correct, she can't refute it, right? If it is literally the truth, there's no refutal that is possible.
Right.
And that would be her loss. But also, if there's a red truth standing, it's his loss.
But what if? But I don't think that both can happen. I don't think there is a tie.
On different mysteries, right? I think it is possible. Like for example, yeah, if Battler solves the second Twilight but can't solve the third Twilight, then there'd be a red truth that stands in the third Twilight, and there'd be a blue truth that stands in the second Twilight.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The game will address that, I'm certain, at some point.
In many words, over many iterations, rehashing the same thing over and over again, just to say exactly what happens when there is one blue truth and one red truth that have not been refuted yet.
Right.
And we get the purple truth.
And I think her electing to not break a blue truth to find a draw is going to have to be by choice, and a draw will keep them there, because otherwise the game ends, and she's under strict instructions to not let that happen. Do you guys think Kinzo's dead?
I want to answer that afterwards.
Yes, I do. Let's read the next paragraph, because I think that's important.
All right, we'll call back to that question.
Back on the game board, Kyrie lays out the theory that Krause is covering up Kinzo's death. Krause and Natsui continue to claim that this is ridiculous. but Kyrie says that if they continue to refuse, the siblings can always have the police force their hands. Kyrie stops playing games and lays out the deal. Kenzo is dead, and Kraus has been embezzling his money. In exchange for not getting him arrested for this, each sibling will accept 3 billion yen in security money, with 300 million of it up front. She estimates that Kraus should be able to manage the 900 million yen payment, and even if he can't, he can always borrow it from father. Kraus and Natsui are enraged at this claim, and Hideyoshi steps in to halt the discussion for now, and give Kraus some time to consider. However, Kraus maintains that he needs no time. However, he will pass the siblings' fervent desire to see their father on to Kenzo himself. The siblings agree to give Kraus until tomorrow morning to convince Kenzo, while they'll break down the door to his study themselves. With that, Kraus and Natsui leave to attempt to convince Kenzo to come down for dinner. With Kraus and Natsui gone, the siblings praise Kyrie for her ruthless strategy. In Kenzo's study, Kraus meekly attempts to convince Kenzo to make an appearance. However, Kenzo gives a damada-na, zen-zen damada of his own and berates Kraus for pathetically getting cornered by his siblings. With just one fingo.
Fingo!
Add it to the list of
Look at my fingo!
misspeaks because the next line has a semi-rhyming word. With just one finger, Kenzo, a man said to only have 3 months left to live, lifts Kraus up off the ground by his collar and holds him aloft before slamming him into the wall. Refusing to let the Ashirmiya family name fall into this weakling's hand, Kenzo says that he will attend the family conference tonight and make an important announcement regarding the succession of the headship.
I did not expect Kenzo to bust out super strength. That was fucking awesome.
I don't think that for some reason that's Kenzo. Something looked wrong in the sprite work.
Yeah, he had like manic eyes.
Goats.
Yeah, the eyes were wrong. Like, even when he was manic,
Yeah.
like, in previous episodes, something was incorrect.
Mhm.
I think that that's a fantasy explanation for something. But the real Kenzo, IMO, is dead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I think that's why we always find him in the furnace.
Yeah, because there's no true body. Well, I mean, that probably is his body, hence the toes.
I think it is his body, but I think he's been dead.
They can't show how old he is. That's why he's always, yeah.
Hmm.
Either can't show how old he is, or it's just not meant to, like... You're never meant to think that he was killed at any day but that day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Destroy the forensic evidence.
Exactly, and that's why he's always found in the furnace. Like what? Episode 1, 2, and 3?
No.
Well, 2, he survives to the end.
Oh, you're right. Now, yet 2, he...
Yeah, but what? I guess that doesn't make any sense. I wonder if in this fragment he is dead, or like I wonder if in 2 he's not dead, but in this fragment he is.
I don't think the game works that way. There is a truth.
So, they talked a little bit earlier about the scope of the cat box, right? The scope of the cat box is specified to be those 2 days.
Yeah.
So anything that happens outside of those 2 days is not within the realms of things that can be modified.
Makes sense.
And what I realized is that the only people to interact with Kenzo so far are furniture, witches, Nanjo, and then Kraus and Natsui. Kraus and Natsui, I think, are the outliers here. Maybe Nanjo as well. We still don't know enough about the guy. But, like, the siblings mentioned, like, they kind of get to Nanjo and be like, you said he had 3 months to live, like, a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Or even, like, maybe, like, longer than that. So the whole Kenzo's alive could very easily be fabricated. Especially with the line that we get at the start of Chapter 3, where it says Kraus and Natsui are saying that Genji and Nanjo and them are on their side.
Mm-hmm.
And in Chapter 3, that line is never explained. They never touch on that again. Clearly, I think this is referencing to the whole, we have to keep the illusion of Kenzo being alive going.
That makes sense to me.
And with Kenzo saying he's going to come down and resolve this whole secession of the headship thing, I mean, we're clearly led to believe, I think, that everything within the game is the same up until when Kenzo throws the ring out of the window and we get the bolt of lightning. So he would have said this every time so far. And then in Chapter 2, we have him gather his furniture to make his will. Again, we have not had that come back up again.
Sure.
I don't know, man.
And we don't necessarily know for sure that's the starting point, but that is a fair case for one.
That's what I think it is.
I kind of Am I on? I think that Kinzo is alive, and something happens at this conference that winds up with him dead, and he is burned because of like concealing evidence. I don't think that he's dead yet. I think that somebody kills him as a result of what he says at the conference, because we haven't seen the conference yet, I don't think, in any of the episodes. We've seen aftermath.
True, yeah, that was cut away from that.
Yeah, but we haven't seen what's actually said.
I don't think the conference has happened, like, ever, a single time. Murders start happening before the conference would start proper.
No, they meet after dinner, right?
We don't necessarily know for sure, like the times where they cut away.
This episode here is implying that the conference is immediately after dinner.
Is it?
Yeah.
There's also a lot of times we see, like, around midnight, they show the adults all talking and they cut away from that. And we usually don't see that scene.
I thought the adults all talking was this conversation where they talk about, because therefore they needed a lot of money right now.
Yeah, I mean, they do that several times. Yeah,
they piecemeal it, like this conversation that all these siblings have leading up to this point.
This is always in the afternoon, right? But then they have dinner, and then we don't see after dinner conversations, but we do see midnight conversations. So I don't know what happens between that after dinner and midnight.
I think the implication is that Kinzo has to be present for it to be the family conference.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we've seen a scene where Kinzo is with them having the family conference.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so I don't think he's dead yet.
Okay.
I'm okay with being wrong, but I don't know. I just don't get the sense that he is. If he's if he's a goat wearing a Kinzo skin, I would be here for that. That would be quite funny.
If he is, this is the only goat servant that we've seen talk, right?
Oh, yeah.
So far, I believe so. Though we could also assume that the goat servant of canon was also talked, even though it was nonsense. And I think both of them are goat servants.
Was that a goat servant, or was that one of the sisters?
No, I don't think so. That's just me.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
I'm just glad that, like, Kinzo's fucking doing something.
You still like him?
First of all, I never liked him, but I think what he brings to the story is very interesting and engaging. And I think his mad ravings that the story opens with is great, really tone setting, and I want more of that. Him picking up Kraus by his collar, lifting him off the ground and throwing him, and chastising his eldest son is, very telling of his character. Do I like it, morally? No. Do I like it as a storytelling device? Absolutely. Very, very ominous, and I really want to see what they do with it.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily mean want to be friends with him, just in the.
Yeah, I don't want to hang out with Kinzo. I will get trapped in a box in a time loop and die a lot.
Mm-hmm. You'll become Dr. Nanjo.
Yeah, right? Who I think at this point is one of 3 people who we haven't seen killed over and over and over. I think him, Battler, and Genji are the only people who haven't died continuously.
I'm just curious, at this point in the story, because we are now starting on question arcs 4, which is the final question arcs.
Mm-hmm.
What are everybody's top 3 suspects? Do you think we've met them yet?
I think that's a difficult question to answer, because are we talking about the suspect of who we think the 19th person is, or do we think that there's a suspect in each fragment that starts off the killing that works with this 19th person? To me, I think that there are different killers in each fragment. In each episode, I don't see how there is one killer across all 4 episodes. And Eva even admits it at the end of episode 3. She admits that she at least killed some of these people. But I don't think that she killed all of them, nor do I think that Eva was the only...
Right.
Was the killer in, episodes 2 and 1. So I think it has to be somebody else that's working with this other person.
Mm-hmm.
Possibly Rosa in episode 2, possibly Natsui in episode 1. These people that keep surviving until the end. Like in my opinion, they have to have some sort of hand in it. To be killing at least half the people, and it's almost like a two-sided battle that Battler ourselves are just not. We're not privy to because Battler hasn't seen any of it, like in-game Battler.
Okay.
I think I kind of agree with Ben there. If there is a mysterious 18th person or extra people, if you still want to talk about truth, if the red text is relative and furniture aren't people in Beatrice's eyes, so there could be even more people as a possibility. Like, I think for chapter 1, the biggest indicator is whoever stabbed Cannon and then ran up the furnace stairs outside.
Right.
I don't think that was the Sister of Purgatory. Right. I think that was somebody. In chapter 2, I don't really know where that evidence lies, but it's in there somewhere.
That's what the review is for.
Yeah. So I think the way the story is going, I do think we're going to be able to overlap all of the chapters together, all of the game boards together, to sort of have a story that leads to Eva being the one who survives and raising Ange, and that leads us to Ange's storyline. And the ending is going to be very dependent on, like, do they reset it and the family survives, or they just learn to, Ange just has to learn to live with what's happened. We have more than half the story left to get to that.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, interesting. I think it was, my top suspects are Kumasawa.
Yep.
Of course.
Okonogi.
Right.
Yep.
Nanjo.
Yep.
And Eva.
You take that back right now. How dare you suspect Nanjo?
I think those are all very plausible suspects. We've got 2 of them with very little of their backstory, despite having ample time to go over it. We have this mysterious newcomer, and Eva, who's clearly been shown to be capable of murder.
Yeah. I think, and when I say Okonogi, I don't necessarily mean that it was him specifically. Maybe it was, I've already forgotten his name because I love him so much. Amakusa. Maybe it was Amakusa on behalf of Okonogi, or maybe it was somebody else on behalf of Okonogi. But
that would
Sure.
be that'd be interesting if, like, we get a flash of seeing him and Ange has been like, "What the fuck was that?" Like she sees him and has to wonder what's going on, because we've known the dude to go too far, which is also very up Beatrice's MO.
yeah, like I could see Amakusa wanting to take her back to the island if he was somehow. I mean, I can't really pin how old he is for him to be making a pass at Ange. Like, if he was somehow involved,
mid 20s is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking as well. But so that he would have been too young.
Yeah.
But, yeah, exactly. So if he was involved 12 years ago, I could see him wanting, like, they always return to the scene of the crime, like to try and direct Ange to a conclusion that doesn't implicate him.
I'm just really impressed that this story hasn't really done much to jump the shark. Like, it's done some weird shit, but like I was like, what if Amakusa is a descendant, like the child of Okonogi, and that's why he's now going back to try to make sure that his father's sins stay buried? Like, that would be like, this is too much for me. Like, that's stupidly complex. That's jumping the shark. I hope it doesn't do that shit.
I don't know.
Really?
I think so.
The lightning fight in the Rose Garden?
I don't think that was real.
Wasn't too much.
That's anime fighting that could,
that's not real. None of that is real because it's a mystery.
Battler's defense is like, what fight? I see no evidence of anything that what you say happened.
Exactly.
Which is, a little like, come on, trust your eyes. And a little bit like, yeah, if 90-story tall structures popped out of the ground on this island, there'd be evidence of it. You can't just say, I did this fight in a magic bubble so that nobody would know.
I mean, you can't say that.
So the garden wouldn't get disrupted and we find the gold right then and there. That's my theory. But I hear you. I hear your point. Crazier things have been said or shown.
I don't think that would be too much of a stretch.
I guess.
I would be okay with that.
It all depends on how they present it.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Clearly, they've got plenty of time to gradually introduce any story beat that they want.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're almost halfway through.
Yeah. Next week, we'll be reading about 3 hours of the VN, ending on the line, see? It's really simple, isn't it? Giggle, giggle. Oh, ahhahaha, kyaaahhahaha. After we get shattered glass. which is videos 58 through 60 of the YouTube playlist.
That's a Beatrice line if I ever heard one.
Isn't it?
Probably.
Is it?
It is.
Ooh. Or is it Maria?
I like guessing who I think it's going to be, and so far, my predictions are pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think they have been, haven't they?
Yeah.
I think I've attuned well to the voice that the author has put into each of the characters.
All right, well, we shall see. And thank you all for joining us once again. As we kind of get deeper into the story, we've got some really interesting mysteries kind of coming up with whether or not Kenzo is alive or dead, and we see stuff from Ange's perspective, and we're learning more about Maria and Ange's past, so keep in mind, this story continues to have some very heavy themes in terms of child abuse. I will say that if we continue the reading, it's going to get pretty heavy, so keep that in mind if you're sensitive to that kind of stuff. But I appreciate you all being here and continuing to read, and remember to think off meta.